Let's break this bitch down. Act 1. Let's set some stuff up.
Our film begins on the snowy shores of a semi-frozen Lake Michigan, high above in a beautiful apartment, a fucking insanely, I mean, I can't even imagine how much that apartment must have been. I know we say that he makes $240,000 a year, but holy crap, that apartment is like, it's got to be in the millions somewhere. Overlooking the Chicago River. I mean, that's like the prime spot in Chicago. Nicolas Cage, aka David Spritzel, aka David Spritz, practices his smile for his job as a local TV weatherman. By the way, throughout this entire film, Nicolas Cage's usual subtle blue eyes will be played instead by the eyes of the Night King from Game of Thrones. I don't know if you noticed that, but holy shit, did they turn up the contrast on his eyes? Like,
I didn't notice.
Like, it's just unbelievable.
It kind of makes sense because the whole color correction with the whole movie is sort of gray and drab, so maybe they had to pop it. I don't know.
There was something going on there.
Cool color and a lot of the overall
muted.
cool color gradient. So
Yeah.
maybe it made his eyes too dark.
Yeah, I'm sure they had to have done something where they like bumped it up just in his eyes, but especially in that first scene, wow, some major saturation going on in his eyeballs. He sports a super punchable face that quickly turns to a sullen frown as if he just realized someone pissed in his morning coffee while he says, "That was refreshing. I'm refreshed. I'm refreshing." Which is a continuing theme throughout the whole movie about him being refreshing. Even when he gets offered the job later on, spoilers, they say that he's refreshing. He does this after finishing brushing his teeth and looking in the mirror. Something I think we all do when we kick off the day, you know. That's what I do every morning. That was refreshing. David enjoys a knockoff version of Good Morning America called Hello America, starring Bryant Gumbel, while practicing weatherman Tai Chi around the apartment while getting ready for work, before he gets a call which alludes to the fact that David is up for the job on the aforementioned Gumbel show. Outside, David finds a ticket on his car saying he has expired tabs, which prompts him to head on over to the happiest place on earth, the drab, soul-crushing hellscape that is the DMV, which fits the mood of this film so well. I actually was watching the behind the scenes, and they were kind of going through the look and feel of the movie, and they just kind of went to a bunch of different spots, and they saw that shot of the clock that's just like plugged into the wall, and this is the cable just hanging down. I don't know if you remember that, but that's like the first like shot in the DMV when Nick Cage like walks into frame. It was taken exactly from their scouting. They shot a picture of that, and then they just put that exact shot in the movie because it does fit David Spritz pretty well. Right away, David is recognized by one of the many mouth-breathing simpletons who watch him on the news. This guy just rubs him the wrong way immediately by saying, "What's up, dude?" as his way of greeting a stranger in line at the DMV, and then he asks him for his autograph, which I'm sure happens to Nick Cage in real life all the time. "Sup, dude?" Which is like, you know, it's kind of this implied, like, he doesn't really deserve respect. Like, immediately, he doesn't deserve respect. Just, "Hey, what's up?" Dave tells him he's not who he thinks he is, but the guy can clearly read his name on the paperwork in his hand with a slight glance from 5 feet away. And then calls him a dick. Then says, "You're on TV, bro. Bro, you're on TV, bro." Over and over till Dave loses it. The D-bag then makes a good point by saying, "Go work in a bank or something if you don't want people to recognize you and bug you in public," which I guess is valid. Then he calls him
like something that probably happens to Nicolas Cage a lot too.
Yeah,
it's like,
sure.
"Just leave me alone. I'm trying to have dinner or whatever." Well, then don't be famous if you don't want to get talked to in public.
I'm positive that happens all the time to those people. You know the scene in, did you guys watch The Disaster Artist?
No, not all the way through.
Oh, okay. Well, there's a scene in there.
I haven't seen The Room, so I haven't watched that yet.
There's a scene where he goes, Tommy Wiseau, the character of Tommy Wiseau goes to a restaurant and just accosts Judd Apatow in a restaurant. And I feel like that scene is probably like very similar to what Nick Cage probably goes through all the time.
Oh, God.
Then he calls him an asshole after Dave tells him to get out of his face. It was a funny exchange there because he's like, get out of my face. And then he like turns around and he's like, you're an asshole. And then he turns back around. He's like, you want to say that to my face? He's like, you said not to be in your face.
I thought you told me to get out of your face, bro.
Next, we see David at work forecasting the weather, something he does surprisingly well through this entire movie. I mean, that's the thing that he does great, which we'll get into later on. I have some theories about kind of the overarching, like one of the reasons that Nigel didn't like the movie. I think I have a theory on it, which Vince, you might too. In voiceover, we hear him talk about how people recognizing him and that some are dicks who think they know him, but really he's not just the fake doofus that he plays on TV. David picks up his chunky daughter, who doesn't seem to be fitting in at ballet class at all. I'd make a joke, but it's 2021 and we're not allowed to do that anymore. She asks him to stop at a store so she can get a notebook, and David gives her $20 of the $21 he has in his wallet, and she uses it to buy cigarettes from the female version of Randall from Clerks, who doesn't think it's worth carding this girl who is maybe 14 at best. By the way, she's actually 12 throughout the whole movie, which we don't find out till later on, but this 12-year-old girl just went in and bought cigarettes with absolutely no issue whatsoever, which I guess is probably realistic. David puts the interest letter he received from Hello America directly on the passenger seat while picking up his dad, who has a Pulitzer Prize plaque the size of a tangerine. Sir Michael Caine, a.k.a. Robert, sits on the letter as if he's used to having to sit on garbage in his son's car. Dave takes Robert to the doctor, where Robert asks if his son can get him a paper while he's in his appointment. And Dave somehow manages to mess even that up. He pays for the paper in a newspaper vending machine. Do those still exist? Are those still a thing? Like while I was watching it, I was like, oh yeah, that used to be a thing. But I don't know if people would even know what that is anymore. Little vending machines that...
Yeah, I mean, I'd see him in Seattle.
Yeah.
Okay. But he accidentally closes it before grabbing the paper. The way that those work is, I mean, it's on the honor system. So you put a quarter in, you pull it down, you pull the paper out, and then you close it and it relocks. But you could actually just grab every frickin' newspaper, which I've seen in movies about 20 times. Somebody's like stolen all the papers. So he heads into Arby's for change, which they won't give him unless he buys something. So he uses his only remaining dollar to buy a 72-cent coffee. Then he forgets that tax exists and ends up with 20 cents, as well as a coffee neither he nor his dad wanted. Back at the doctor's office, Robert is so perplexed by the fact that David didn't buy him a paper, but instead got him a coffee, that he starts to a slow descent into giving up on doing an American accent completely. That just lasts the rest of the film, where it's just kind of like, is he supposed to be American? He sort of sounds Irish at times, or English. Mm-hmm. Like I said in the opening,
he's got like probably the thickest Cockney accent of anybody working in Hollywood, and they cast him as a Midwestern American guy.
Maybe that's something he wanted, like as a challenge or something. Like, well, let's see if I can do an American accent.
I did get like a lot of like Liam Neeson vibes of just Liam Neeson can't mask his Irish accent in anything, and it felt like that it was even harder. I imagine a Cockney accent is even harder to break, even for a knighted actor like Michael Caine.
At times he kind of like. It was like his English accent mixed with his American accent that he was trying to do sounded Irish. Like he sounded like he was like about to get some Lucky Charms or something. Like I said in the opening, apparently Jimmy Carter called him a national treasure. National treasure. And they played racquetball together, so we can only assume that he's supposed to be a born and bred American citizen that didn't come from overseas. I don't know. You could probably imply, like, oh yeah, he was born in England and then he came over and then he slowly lost his accent or something. You know?
Yeah.
Back at the car, David moves the letter from Hello America off the seat while announcing that he's moving this letter from Hello America off of the seat here. But his dad, who just got what we can only assume was unsettling news from the doctor, pays David nor the letter, no mind the whole way home. I love that scene where he's like looking at him through the window, like looking at the letter and then looking at him.
Just staring him down.
Just please look at it. Turns out both of David's kids are both train wrecks. His son Michael got busted huffing chrome paint and screaming, "Witness me!" before failing spectacularly in front of Immortan Joe, or was caught with drugs or something and had to go to rehab. He was a war boy. That's all I'm saying. Right.
I forgot he played him. All I was thinking was, hey, it's J.R.R. Tolkien.
He's been in a lot of things, but that's the one that, like, as soon as I saw him, was like, oh shit, it's that guy.
It's Beast.
While Shelley got her dad to fork over $170 for a junior bow and private lessons to learn how to shoot a bow and arrow, but after trying twice and not being able to perfect the complex art of archery, she just gave up and hasn't been back since. I mean, it's kind of implied that maybe she spent more time there, but she shot the bow twice and then was like, fuck this. I'm out. We see Mike hanging out at the mall with Bobby Hill from King of the Hill. Did you see that kid? Looks exactly like Bobby Hill. He spots one of the counselors that he had in his rehab group, who seems to have the chubs for Mike, which Bobby Hill sees immediately, but Mike is totally oblivious until later in the film. This creepy fucker buys Mike a sweater and gets pretty damn bummed when Mike's dad shows up for some odd reason. David takes Mike home. Well, not his home. Mike, Shelley, and their mom Noreen's home, since David and Noreen are now separated. Noreen and David have an awkward exchange about Dave potentially getting the Hello America job. And then Dave shoehorns in that his dad had to go to the doctor for a test of some sort, which he doesn't mention what the test is, but he thinks he'll be okay, even though he never asked his dad what the test was for or what the doctor said. He never gave any like mind to that at all. It's just like, well, dad's going to the doctor. I'll just see if he can see this note from Hello America that I got. That was all that was about for him. Then David tries to be playful with his estranged wife and chucks a snowball at her head.
Noreen!
I think we've all been there. Nothing says let's get back together better than an unexpected ball of ice to the face. Noreen doesn't take it as well as you would think, since he busted her glasses and unfortunately doesn't come running back into David's arms.
I just love that. He's like, hey, Noreen. And then she turns and he chucks it and it hits her. And she's like, what the fuck? And he's like, oh, you turned into it. And he called her.
It's all her fault. That's a recurring fact through this whole movie is like, it's always someone else's fault. It's never David's fault till the end. Back in the city, David gets a call from the talent scout at Hello America, but is rudely interrupted by a dude who yells, hey, weatherman, and then launches a Frosty at him. The first of many times he gets pelted with food. With the Frosty coating his shoulder, David hears the voice of his dad, who asks why somebody would throw a milkshake at him. It's pretty, I would ask. A little Coppola quick fact here. The plastic spoon that stuck to Nicolas Cage's lapel was actually a metal spoon that had to be painted to look like it was plastic, and then it was held on by a magnet the whole time so that it wouldn't fall. It's attention to detail. You didn't have to have that spoon in there. But
Yeah.
I thought that was cool. David tries to explain as best as possible to his baffled dad that people throw shit at him all the time because they hate him for being the schmuck weatherman on TV, who apparently doesn't even have a meteorology degree whatsoever. Which I was kind of wondered about that. Steve Conrad actually mentioned that in the behind the scenes of like, they don't ever really seem to know what the hell they're talking about. Like, they don't ever seem to actually have any kind of scientific knowledge. It's just like they're just repeating something that someone else wrote for them to say, which is so fucking true. It's crazy. I've never seen a weatherman who seemed like, you know, like the in your face smiley ones like Nick Cage plays in this movie, never seem to know what the hell they're talking about. They're just kind of repeating what's on the teleprompter. Robert then drops the bomb that he has lymphoma, which can't possibly be true because David said he'd be fine. Just in that previous scene there. David explains in voiceover that every couple months someone throws something at him while a husband and wife watch Dave Spritz on TV and have an exchange that may be the closest to a real conversation I've had with my wife as anything I've ever seen on film before. The husband says, "What kind of name is Spritz?" "That's a bullshit name." "That's a TV name." "He's bullshit." And then she says, "I like him. He's handsome." And the husband follows with, "He's an asshole. I don't like his face. His asshole face." Dave explains that his job is incredibly easy and that he makes $240,000 a year plus appearances, such as being Abe Lincoln at a Civil War Oktoberfest.
Yeah, what the fuck was up with that?
I was so confused. Like, why are there like people in Civil War costumes and then Fraulein's doing Oktoberfest stuff, and then Abe Lincoln is just, I don't know. I was very confused. Anyway, David spots a sexy Fraulein with floppy titties, and then he has sex with her in his hotel room. And then he theorizes that since he receives a large reward for pretty much zero effort and contribution, people huck shakes at him out of spite. Because everything he does is easy, like getting laid, getting paid. But I'm going to make an argument later on that might change the perception of that a little bit. He then makes it his mission to prove to his dad that he's not a dipshit before he dies. You know, because his dad is this world-renowned fucking Pulitzer Prize author, and his son is this fuck-up weatherman who gets, has everything handed to him.
Anyways, his dad doesn't get laid like him, though.
Yeah, he doesn't get no floppy-titted Frauleins. So he makes it his mission from then on throughout the rest of the film to make sure that his dad doesn't see him as a dipshit before he dies. Meanwhile, the rapey rehab counselor takes Mike to a movie and then checks out his ass while he's going through the door. Oh, so disturbing. While Shelley has a fun conversation about burning a cunt classmate while smoking with a friend. I want to burn that cunt. David takes Shelley to the company party where he tries to get her to head back to the archery range, but she's not having it. Dave spots the cigarettes in Shelley's purse, but decides to make the best of the day by competing in a potato sack race, where Shelley falls and tears her ACL and MCL when Dave pushes her to complete the race.
Also notice that they just like leave their bag next to the skating rink when they go out on the rink. Which I'm like, what?
Chicago's super safe. Yeah, it's known for being super safe.
Yeah, just leave your bag of whatever and go, and it's on the honor system. No one's going to steal it.
Noreen bitches him out for being at least partially responsible for their daughter having a life-altering injury that will plague her till her dying breath. And thus ending Shelley's promising dancing career as well as any shot she ever had at making it in the NBA.
She'll never be a ballerina now.
Yeah. Though they do mention that she's in dance class later on again, and I'm like, I have some problems with the ACL, MCL thing, which I will address as they come up.
Yeah.
Noreen's new boy toy, Russ, shows up to try and calm things down. and David calls him a fat asshole and a dildo within earshot of Robert, who is, as usual, disappointed in his son.
I think he calls a pork fucker, which I think was the best line in the movie.
Yeah.
Pork fuck, you porker.
Turns out Robert stopped by to let the family know that Shelley has been being called camel toe at school because her classmates can, quote, see the crease of her vagina through her tight clothing.
I just want to say, this movie is really creepy when it comes to the kids.
Yeah. Yeah, it has its moments, man.
I was like, why? Why would you add that into this film? I'm already uncomfortable watching this dude try to bang this 14 or 15-year-old kid. I don't need this now.
Yeah, we should probably, leave it at least one of the kids not being creepy as fuck sexually. Like, David says he's going to deal with it, and Robert is skeptical, to say the least. Yeah, pork fucker. Later, Dave calls Noreen to smooth things over after daydreaming about camel toes for a bit while waiting for a parking spot. Just a little too much showing through the pants there.
Let the audience know what camel toe was, I guess.
Yeah, I guess
they needed visual aids and a flashback scene to talk about it.
Yeah. The really disturbing part is that they show Shelley's camel toe several times, which is really not something I wanted to see.
Yeah.
He suggests that they see someone and try to work things out, but is interrupted by a big gulp flying through his window and into his face. Every time this movie starts to drag a bit, you can count on somebody throwing something at Nick Cage. Dave and Noreen head to do some trust exercises where they are each tasked with naming something that affected their partner that they're not proud of. So Dave raises his hands and says, I had this thing with porno on the computer where I got a little preoccupied, but is cut off by the counselor who says she wants them to write it down, not say it in front of this group of 30 people.
At least he's being honest.
Yeah. He's proactive. He was the first one to raise his hand immediately. They write down something the other person doesn't know that happened during their relationship, and then they hand it to the other person, and the other person is meant to never read what is on the paper. Dave, of course, reads his 5 seconds later in the bathroom, where he finds out that Noreen thought his sci-fi novel was stupid, sucked, and was embarrassing since he spent 4 years writing it. So we find out that Dave also wants to write like his dad did, and he's fucking horrendous at it, obviously. Every piece that talks about his writing paints it as though he's just god awful at it, which is really funny to me. Steve Conrad also said that was a friend of his that he and his wife went to one of these trust exercises, and he was like, I mean, I feel like I would have read it right away. Did you read it? And he was like, of course, I read it. It's the second that I got away from her. Which I think is hilarious. Because I think we probably all would, right?
I wouldn't.
No?
Oh, Mr. Trustworthy over here.
Ooh. Look at him, Mr. Trustworthy.
all of a sudden, there he is. Mr. Trustin' all of a sudden.
Over coffee, Noreen says she thinks the exercise went pretty well. And Dave screws it all up by confronting her about hating his novel. She is understandably blown away by what an asshole he is for reading the note, and calls him a real blue ribbon fuck, which is a high honor. Just ask Pabst, who won the blue ribbon in 1893 and are still bragging about it.
But just like Pabst, he is a little bit of a piss sandwich.
Yeah. More than a little. Back at Noreen's, Dave says he wants to try giving their marriage another shot. To which Noreen says, fuck you. So she might need some time to process things. She then reads Dave's note, since he read hers, and it says, Throughout marriage, BJs lacked enthusiasm. Had difference of opinion about how important that was. I thought very. Noreen then explains that her BJs lacked enthusiasm because she hated him. Hated his hair, his ugly legs, forearms, hated kissing his lips. And that's why she lacked enthusiasm when his cock was in her mouth. Direct quote there. Meanwhile, Shelley has been listening at least since cock in my mouth and seems perplexed. She asks how it went, and Dave enthusiastically says, good.
Act 2. The conflict.
So at the doctor's with Dad, who is dying of lymphoma, Dave asks if he started his novel yet, to which he says he's been preoccupied. You know, I wonder why.
Sorry, I didn't have time to read your amazing novel. I'm dying.
I'm dying. After the appointment, Robert explains that the cancer is too far gone for radiation and that he needs to see another doctor for some clinical trials. Not the best news.
No, that's not great.
No.
You're a lost cause, so go do some experiments and see what happens.
Dad, I need you to read the novel. You really only got a short amount of time left, if we're being honest.
Can you give me some notes?
Okay? Maybe do a rewrite. You know, just take your time. Oh, shoot. In the car, David tells his dad that he's up for the Hello America job since he never saw or read the letter he left in the seat or on the dashboard when his dad was finding out whether or not he had cancer, and then lies about having a shot at getting Noreen and the kids back and moving them to New York.
You know, I kind of felt like at the same time they kind of painted it as like he had no shot at that job whatsoever at that point. Mm-hmm. But, you know, he slowly, over the course of the show, you see that he actually is one of the front runners. But at that point, it just felt like, I don't have a shot at this stupid job that you don't give a shit about. And I'm not actually going to be able to get my marriage back together.
Like, I think there's a recurring thing in the movie that he tries stuff a lot and it fails immediately. Yeah. So like that was that trying to set up that expectation of like, well, he's going to try for this job in New York and obviously he's not going to get it because he sucks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the whole time I felt like even when he does start seeing success for that job, I always felt like he was going to fuck his way out of it or fail his way out of it. Because like Nigel said, he's always trying something, it fails. Tries, fails. Mm-hmm. But, you know, let's see how those failures unfold. At the station, Dave tries to catch a crash course in meteorology because he's a weatherman. And that might be handy to know. He then decides if his camel toe sporting daughter wasn't going to use those lessons he paid for at the archery range, he would. He slowly starts to get the hang of it, and finally, for the first time in the entire movie, seems to actually genuinely enjoy something. He might actually get good at archery, who knows?
I saw a thing where somebody theorized that the whole idea of the archery was that up until this point, he's been a target. And this is the way of showing that he no longer is going to be a target, and then he's going to start taking control of his life.
That's actually a good point.
Yeah.
Because you do see, like, even in that montage of him learning, like, he's failing, and he slowly starts getting, then he gets a little success, and then it just keeps building until he, spoiler alert, murders his whole family.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that's the way I thought it was.
Actually. He actually.
I like that. It was like, it's one of those positive things in life, like have a hobby, learn a skill, you know, practice at something, work at it. Mm-hmm. You know, I thought it was like, oh, okay, going to turn a little corner here in the mid movie switch. You know,
he sticks with something finally, which hasn't happened up to this point, and seems like it really hasn't happened in his life up to this point with anything.
Yeah,
aside
also,
from the weather.
The part when when his daughter is learning earlier, he doesn't participate in it. Like, it's the instructor teaching her how to do it, and so when she screws it up and wants to quit, he's just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But now that he has an active role in learning it, he becomes a better teacher at it, or at least tries to, and then fails at it because he tries and fails and stuff. But it was a nice progression.
Yeah.
Like, hey, that's the secret, his kids just want to do stuff with him, not have him bring them to stuff and do things.
Yeah. I think that's
Maybe stay
something
away from
that's
ice skating, though.
pretty similar of a lot of fathers. It's just kind of like they don't really know how to bond with their kids.
Yeah. It's very
kinda
reminiscent of my childhood. Over at rapey rehab counselor's house, the pedo and Mike. Okay, how lucky is this pedo? He found the only Twilight-looking twink at his rehab center that is dumb enough to walk right into his molesting arms. Sit down for a cool, casual dinner, which I'm sure is totally normal to do with your rehab counselor.
Yeah.
During dinner, the pedo asked Mike, who's like 15, by the way, if he lifts weights while serving him salad. A little metaphor there. He's about to toss. He then suggests they take some before shots of him shirtless so they can compare them to pictures he takes of this poor kid in like a month to see if he's making gains. Spoiler alert, he doesn't. No gains are made.
Hey, it's pretty clever, It's a pretty clever tactic.
Yeah. I mean, who hasn't done that?
Yeah,
Take your shirt
2-year-olds
off.
are easy targets. You just flatter them a little bit,
Why don't you just whip your shirt off there and we'll see if you're making any
Especially the ones
gains.
with daddy issues. He doesn't have a father figure in his life, so he latches on to the first positive male role model that comes along
That
and also
is
wants to
true.
rape him.
Yeah.
That is true. Although the whole time his son Mike is just very oblivious to everything going on around him, other than one scene which I'll get to here in a little bit.
I mean, you notice that Bobby Hill just took the fuck off. He never.
Oh, dude, he's
just immediately like, ugh, I don't like the look of this.
That's because Hank's a good dad.
That's true.
Mike obliges and gets and things get creepy as the counselor says Mike is shredded and snaps a ton of pictures of him.
He takes like 40 pictures.
Then the pedo offers to give Mike a camera that David is planning to buy him if he maintains a B average in school.
Just make sure to take some pictures for me so I have something for the spank wall. I'll buy you that $600 camera, no problem.
No problem, dude. I'll just give it to you. David attempts to teach Camelto, whose torn ACL, MCL seems to be fine now, how to shoot some arrows, but she's still not into it because she wanted to kill animals, not to shoot targets. All right.
Do you have any idea how long it takes to rehab from an ACL and MCL?
Yes, actually.
It's like 6 months or something.
Yeah,
Right?
it could be 6 to 12 months depending on how severe it is and how you actually attack the rehab. Let me tell you, so I was about her age when I tore my ACL, MCL.
Oh, man.
It's not fun. Like, you're not doing archery. I mean, I don't understand. I guess they I don't understand his thought process. That was one of my questions. So I'll just throw it out here because it bothered me from that point on. How do you just have this major plot point of her tearing that to the point where it leads to this huge argument and all this stuff to boom, she's totally fine.
It's done. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was I was stubborn like her. I didn't want to use the crutches, but for a good 2 months, if I tried to walk on that thing, I was in excruciating pain.
Yeah.
Excruciating
And she's back
pain.
in ballet dance class right away.
Yeah, it was probably a good year before I was allowed to participate in any serious sports because they were worried I was going to tear it again. I mean, it was 6 months, 3 months of cast it up, and then 3 months of rehab, and then from there they had me ease back into it because they were terrified. Once again, you tear it, tear it again. It's gonna just be a nightmare for somebody that age.
And it leads to other kinds of injuries too. I know you guys aren't huge basketball fans, but I live in the Bay Area, so I follow the Warriors, and I've been watching Klay Thompson's recovery. Guy, he went to Washington State University, so that's where I first watched him, and then he came and played for Golden State. So I've always had an interest in his career, and he tore his MCL in the finals in 2018, 2019. And then he rehabbed the entire year. So it was over 12 months. And then he tore his ACL in practice. and then missed an entire another season. So he's out 2 entire years from that one injury that will affect him for the rest of his life. Like, I remember Isaiah Thomas tore his ACL in, like the early 90s, and he was on a fucking cane until like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's bad.
I heard when I was took an anatomy class in high school, we talked about the knees for a while, and like doctors call them the beauty and the beast because functionally a perfectly healthy knee is a thing of architectural masterpiece, like evolutionarily and stuff speaking. But if anything goes wrong with it, it basically can be wrecked for the rest of your life because they're so complicated and complex that you got problems with them, and then it can screw up, and it doesn't, and ligaments don't heal very well because they don't get blood supply, and so
Yeah.
I don't understand why that was part of this movie. If I was just gonna chuck all that out the window.
like a
She
ankle
sprained
injury.
sprained her ankle or something.
Yeah, just like a sprain. I mean, because that's a very serious injury that they just like wash your hands up.
Yeah.
It's okay. Archery will heal her. All right. I'm done with my tangent. But that
She
just
doesn't
bothered
have
the
to use
hell
her
out of
legs
me.
for that. She can use her arms. I think that was the rationale of it. It's like somebody who'd never experienced that or had any kind of firsthand knowledge of it was just like, well, you could still walk around. You'll be fine.
No, oh God, no, dude. I mean, you should be on crutches and not like, in all seriousness, like the weight would contribute to the need to stay off of it because that's a lot of pressure you're putting on to your knee and to those ligaments. But
one of my big Coppola questions is, what the hell is the timeline of this movie because of that? Like, I think the ACL really just throws off the whole timeline of the thing. And also, like, having, my dad went through a similar thing as what Robert is going through in this film. Those tests take, months and months, before they would eliminate all possibilities and go to clinical trials. It would be, potentially a year before they would just be like, okay, well, there is no hope.
Which all that would be fine, except I don't think they're gonna. Hello America's gonna give David a year to do the interview process for their new weatherman. So that kind of puts a really immediate timeline on the whole thing.
And then at his dad's actual funeral, he does make mention of it still being winter.
But
it rains.
The whole thing takes place over the winter. So what is that? At most, an early winter in Chicago might be October to April? So 7 months?
Yeah, it's a long period of time, but still questionable.
Yeah.
David tries his best to explain that he doesn't want to kill animals, but Shelley says it's boring shooting targets even though she hasn't even come close to hitting one yet. Because shooting a live moving object is way easier.
Yeah.
Well, it's more fun, damn it.
It is more fun.
It is more fun.
Murder's a lot funner.
He takes her home, and then he parks his car and creepily watches the house from across the street. Mike spots him on his way home, and David explains that sometimes he likes to park and look at the house because he likes to see the kids. Playing guitar through the windows and such. Poor Mike can't seem to get away from creepy men watching him. I don't care if it's your father. That's still fucking creepy.
It's really creepy. I was supposed to come across like as wholesome, like he really misses his home and his kids and stuff. But man, it feels really creepy. Especially since he hasn't really been like the most like
hands on with Mike.
And he's not super likable from the get-go all the way through the end of the movie. He's not likable. I don't think you're supposed to like him at any point, really. But it just makes it even creepier.
It's just a whole creepy scene. I just feel bad for Mike. All the male figures, well, almost all the male figures in his life are just these freaking weird, creepy people.
Except for Russ.
Yeah.
He's like the only decent
He's the
dude.
only redeemable person in this movie.
Porker.
David then, that pork fuck.
I kept expecting to be some twist where Russ is also terrible, but
He's molested.
no.
Mike as well.
Everyone else in the movie is awful in one way or the other, but Russ is just cool. He's just a cool stepdad.
Yeah.
Yeah. David then monologues that someone should be happy in the house and ponders how he fucked it all up. He then has a flashback to being asked by Noreen to grab dinner and to not forget the tartar sauce. We see him walking through the chilly streets of Chicago, repeating to himself to remember the tartar sauce, while getting distracted by, among other things, a girl's ass and how much he wants to put his face in it. His hips are cold. He likes eating pussy, but most black guys don't. What happened to the guy who tried to go around the world in a balloon? Neil Young, Neil Diamond. He wishes he had 2 dicks and that he hasn't had a Spanish omelet in a long time. Being inside David's head is what I imagine it must have been like to be a prisoner in Gitmo when the CIA would blast loud, heavy music while you were stuffed into a box hardly big enough to fit you in. That whole scene was just chaotic.
It's really good at stream of consciousness. I did like that.
Yeah.
It was written really well. And
I
somebody
feel
who
like
clearly
that's
has
like the
ADHD.
best scene. Yeah, best scene in the whole movie. Kind of the one
Although I
that's
did
still
wonder about
talked
the
about.
logistics of this whole situation, because it's like they live in the suburbs, but somehow he's walking into the city to go get tartar sauce from the place. Like, why didn't he just drive? I don't.
I figure he had parked and he was walking from where he parked to go
okay.
get it because parking in a city can be a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
All right, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I assumed.
It seemed to me like he just walked all the way from his house to go get food.
I mean,
which
he
is
might
like,
have.
It's gonna be freezing cold by the time you get home, dude.
He probably went to go get in the car and then started thinking he saw like a tree and he's like, oh, that's a nice tree. I wonder if that's a birch tree. And then he just starts fucking walking. He Forrest Gumps his way to this nondescript restaurant.
Forrest Gumps himself.
So as you might imagine, he of course forgets the tartar sauce, which he then lies to Noreen about, saying they were out. This seems to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, not the camel toes, but the camel's back for Noreen, because after a lengthy argument, she kicks Dave out of the house for good, which I mean is pretty fair. I personally fucking love tartar sauce, so I understand where she's coming from.
I'm exactly the same, man.
Yeah. Sorry, it's not as bad as someone you love saying they don't like this movie, but whatever. You know what? No. I'm not gonna get into it. Let's just let's keep going. I don't want to go off on another tangent. We already had some good ACL, MCL talk that I'm sure we're gonna get.
I have to say, if I have chicken strips without tartar sauce, it's fucking horrible. I mean, like, the tartar sauce completes the meal. Same with fish. I mean, like, if you eat fish and chips without tartar sauce,
fish and chips.
I would be pissed. I would be pissed. Noreen is 100% right in this situation.
That's all I thought during the whole thing. I was like, man, she's spot on.
Yep.
And it's just kind of like she seems to be right more often in this relationship than she's not.
They kind of paint her as a bitch a little bit, but she's totally right in every single situation.
Yeah.
Throughout the
She's
whole
mad
movie.
that he read the note. She's mad that he forgot tartar sauce. She's mad. We'll get into that in a second. I don't want to spoil that part, actually. All right. So back at the station, Dave gets a call from Hello America, which prompts him to head to New York, where Camel Toe and his dad tag along so he can receive more tests. Dave and his daughter head to the mall, where she picks out some camel toe inspired clothing, which makes Dave understandably uncomfortable. They go for a walk, and Dave confronts her about being called camel toe, which she has interpreted as a sign that she is tough because camels can walk all over the desert and over hot rocks. Dave agrees with her, giving us the first genuine moment of the movie, which is ruined when Camel Toe says the dumbest thing. I think they make tires out of camel toes.
It's like it's just being an idiot just runs in his family.
That's what, yeah. Like,
both of his kids are just totally stupid.
I was like, wow, this is an awesome moment. He's bonding with his daughter, and they're having this really genuine connection. And then she says that dumb shit.
pertaining to him buying the clothes and stuff, or my wife was like, why is her mom not doing this? Like, why is it on the dad to go buy her nice clothes for a 12-year-old girl? Like, it should be the mom that's helping her like become a woman, not the dad. So she actually gave him a pass for kind of failing as a father in this department because it shouldn't be on him as much.
Right. I don't know. I feel like it could go, dads do this kind of stuff a lot too. So
involved dads do.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's true. I was gonna say, I thought like maybe that was the idea was that each successive generation since Robert has just been dumber than the previous one, like just huge steps down.
There's something to that. Yeah.
Well, I hope his daughter writes a book about camel toes.
Camel car tires.
That just be called that camel car tire by Shelley Spritzel.
Afterwards, David takes her to finish shopping. This time for non-camel toey dresses. Which I have to admit, I did like that it then does follow up with her, like him convincing her that these more like adult or more age. Or body appropriate, I hate to say it, but like body type appropriate clothing, which actually make her look better, bring some life to her. Because like I made this joke to you guys earlier, the way that they portray her early on, especially when there's like that scene when she's sitting there smoking with her friend, I really thought to myself, this 12-year-old looks like a 40-year-old woman. just giving up on life and like the color palette that they chose for her clothing up until this point just really like kind of gave that to you, like just not really gives a fuck about anything. So I thought it was nice to see her actually get into some clothing that actually accentuates her personality because she's a little kooky, and also makes her look a little more serious.
Now she looks like Blossom. You ever see that show?
Yeah. Yeah.
She kind of dresses like Blossom.
Dave finally has a nice time with his daughter, and they connect over her wearing clothes that won't get her beat up and made fun of anymore at school. They show Robert her clothes, but he has some bad news. Mike was arrested for fucking up his drug counselor's car. Mike said the pedo was trying to suck him off, and Mike chucked a rock through the guy's window. I never knew how much I needed to hear Michael Caine say the words,
"He was trying to suck him off."
Until that moment, which is then punctuated by him being confused by all this jacking and sucking and fucking things up. My favorite moment, though, is Robert staring off into the distance, reliving a memory as if it happened yesterday. Alfred tells David, "I once sucked off a man whose cock was the size of a tangerine." The tangerine is a running theme in this show.
I hope you've got one in your act too, Nigel. That'd be great.
Shoehorn it now.
Yeah, find a tangerine joke for Act 3.
Okay. Nigel's like, "I'd rather shove a rock the size of a tangerine up my ass than watch this movie again." David flips out and calls home while Shelley pretends to shoot cancer patients. She's doing the Lord's work. Noreen says the drug pedo told the cops Mike tried to steal his wallet, then shits on Dave for trying to get a job that pays him over $1 million a year that will make him a household name. That's the one point where I was like, okay, yeah, so she's not always the most reasonable person.
Yeah. How dare he try and do this, get this job.
Get this job. And, sure, it's in another state, but she, like, already wants him to have nothing to do with the family, so...
They're already estranged. I mean, kind of. I mean, she wants to be more estranged, but this is, like, the perfect thing. And then on top of that, like, think about the alimony.
Child support.
Yeah. Alimony, child support.
She gets, like, 40% of that.
Yeah. Gosh, she's not thinking clearly.
Man, I need to marry somebody and get child support. Be amazing. Just live off of that.
Robert overhears David call Russ a dildo again, as well as him call his daughter camel toe to Noreen on the phone, and is not pleased. He asks Dave to get him a coffee, but he again has no money. Just a constant, unending disappointment to his poor dad. You really should carry more money, David.
which is a callback to what he tells Camel Toe earlier in the movie. Or I can't.
She tells him the same
She
thing,
tells
too.
him to carry more money around
Yeah.
because he only has $20.
I know.
That's it.
Yeah. At the hotel, Robert tells David that he only has a few months to live, which sends David on a hotel minibar bender, which, take it from me, is the most expensive kind of bender you can have. And let's be honest, how drunk can you really get off the 3 airplane bottles of booze? I mean, I guess he kind of looks like a lightweight, so he could probably pull it off.
I mean, not based on how he looked in Grand Isle. I mean, he was chugging every second.
Yeah, Grand Isle, Nick Cage. Those 3 bottles would have just been an appetizer.
Probably brushes his teeth.
That's his mouthwash. He washes his mouth out with whiskey.
I fucking love that line so much. Drink. I'm having one.
I did like the inversion of like he's not a drunk in this movie.
Yeah.
So that, like 3 shots of booze is enough to knock him out because he's such a lightweight. Whereas like I think every other movie we've seen, he pretty much just is an alcoholic.
Pretty much.
Yeah, because I think every movie he's a heavy drinker up until this one, huh? Or to be fair, in Deadfall he's a coke addict, but tomato.
He also drinks a lot in that
Same
too.
thing.
Oh, that's true. He was drinking the beers like a baby bottle.
Mame.
My bad. Davis sat peacefully in his pass-out chair when suddenly a giant SpongeBob balloon appears in the window, and Dave imagines himself happily waving to the crowd on a float with his smiling family right by his side in a parade. He waves to the crowd like he has cerebral palsy.
Well, who's that with him?
Those are the wife outside promotional fees, which put
That got his wife's ear, I bet.
that buys a lot of face.
Well, Ed McMahon and a co-host asks, didn't they used to have a real fucked up relationship? To which Ed McMahon says, not anymore. And that everything is great because he has a great salary.
He makes a lot of money now, so everything's all good.
So everything's
fixed.
Which I think is a good, I think that's actually a good comment on how people view celebrity.
Yeah.
Like these people, or wealth, like you have, once you make it and have all that money, all your problems just go away.
And there's more than a few people I've talked to when I bring up doing this show that say like, isn't Nick Cage broke? Like that's why he does like 10 movies a year is because he has no money and he has to pay all this like, he's got like 6 divorces and stuff. So it's still, that may, I don't know if that was going on back when this happened, but he may have had, that may have been affecting Nick Cage as well. Like people just saying like, why does he do all these terrible movies? Doesn't he have enough money to not do these things? To not degrade himself with working for a living?
Working.
I will say, I've heard that too from every person that I've mentioned this show too. It's like, why does he do all these shitty movies all the time? And I will say, like, with a few exceptions, I think he chooses really interesting roles. They just might be movies that are like super low budget and direct to video stuff, but like he's not I don't think that he's doing it solely to make money. I think that is a big motivation. But I also think that he actually genuinely really loves doing it. And I think it comes across in his roles. And I think that's why he's so captivating all the time, is because he fucking loves acting. So get off his back.
Get off his back, Nigel.
It's not me that says that. I defend him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at...
you really think about it, like I don't think he's just taking random roles that are offered to him. Like you said, I think I don't think he cares so much about how much they're paying him, and he just cares more about doing movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you listen
if
to
he
him,
wanted the fame and the money, he would have just kept the name Coppola and coasted off of that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, if you listen to him in interviews talking about movies he's done or decisions he's made for movies, you definitely tell he genuinely enjoys it, and he really does give this an honest effort to create a character. And that's, like we talked about multiple times, that's why sometimes it's so eccentric and it doesn't always work, but it's more than I don't know, like somebody like let's say Michael Caine just phoning it in this movie, trying not to slip into his accent.
Michael Caine is Michael Caine in every movie you've ever seen. Nicolas Cage is not Nicolas Cage in more than 2 movies ever. Like,
It was nice to see him slip back into Peter Lowell in The Color Out of Space.
Yeah.
But that's not common. You hardly ever see that.
30 years later, went back into that character for a minute.
Am I getting through to you, Mom Jack? Dave wakes up looking decidedly less refreshed than he did at the start of the film. He heads to his audition where they say they think he's refreshing, and they love the Spritz nipper, a gimmick his station came up with to show what the coldest day of the week will be, ensuring everyone knows not to forget their jackets. That's just for you guys. Dave meets Brian Gumble, who notices how melancholy he seems and asks if he's nervous, which Dave says he's not. It's other shit. I think this is how Al Roker got his job as well. Dave crushes his audition and makes the green screen his bitch, much to the delight of the executives hiring for the job. Outside, Robert and Shelley wait for David so they can head to the airport. The talent scout tells Dave he has a compulsory agreement with Purina if he gets the job, and Robert is confused to why David would be selling dog food, and then says his dog lives in a different house with his wife and children. Which was like the biggest fuck you moment in this movie.
You don't even have a pet.
Your dog lives with your wife.
Your wife and your kids. And Russ.
In that gorgeous house.
I was born in Illinois.
Yeah, that was like the biggest fuck you moment. It wasn't even him trying to be a dick. He genuinely was confused. Like in his brain, it came across to me like his dad was generally like, why would you do that? You don't even own pets. Like you don't have a pet. Why would you endorse it?
Why would a weatherman sell dog food?
Yeah, that's not what we do, David.
Why do we fall, David?
So we could sell Purina. Back home, Dave tries to talk to his son about what happened, but is blocked from going to his bedroom by that dildo Russ, who came over and decided to do David's fatherly duty for him. This doesn't sit well with Dave, so he does what any of us would do. Any reasonable man in the situation would do the same thing. He slaps Russ with a glove like a 19th century English dandy, challenging him to a duel.
Apparently they were going to a movie. What the fuck?
Why are you here?
I love that scene. It's just like it just paints an even better picture of this character. Like this, he fails at everything he tries to do. He fails to connect with his kids most of the time. He's failed miserably at his marriage, and now he fails at actually being a man. Because instead of punching Russ, which would have been kind of a little over the top to begin with anyways, he slaps him like a bitch with his glove. And his dad in the background was like, oh, that's disgusting. My son's a bitch. Which is funny because he then explains that if you don't want your father to think you're a silly fuck, then you probably shouldn't slap a guy across the face with a glove, which are words to live by. Dave's day gets worse when some dickhead kids jump on the elevator with him and press every single button. Dave then kills both children, one by strangulation and the other he just curb stomps. Actually, that's just how I would have handled the situation. My apologies.
Act 3. It's about time to wrap this thing up.
Dave takes another stab at his award-winning sci-fi novel, but after reading the incredible prose of a man snatching plutonium and drinking scotch, decides to delete everything instead. So like we get this glimpse of his writing, and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
No wonder nobody wants to read this.
The smartest thing he's done up until this point was deleting that manuscript.
It's terrible.
Did my brother write this?
He heads out to the lake to shoot some arrows, which shows that he's actually getting pretty good at archery. Like he's been practicing it in his spare time, which is, again, good to see. Have some hobbies. I found it kind of weird. Like, I thought originally that he and his daughter had set up those targets in the park, but they were still there and they were all frozen over. So, like, does this park just have targets in them and invites people to shoot arrows in a public park as people are jogging by and walking around? It seems kind of weird.
Yeah. I know that there are, like, from my experience, I've seen them in Golden Gate Park, but they're like, there's like a big tree line and a hill behind them, so that there's no chance.
Yeah, there was no backstop. It was just it's just like setting up 3 targets in a field with the big opening behind it, where people probably having picnics and I guess it's also the middle of winter, so there's probably not a lot of people hanging out. But
I guess Lake Michigan is his stop. It's like the arrows are just going to go into the lake.
Yeah, I was trying to remember. I think the lake is kind of right behind there. So,
I thought it was parallel to the shoreline.
I think it's kind of like it's sort of like a little peninsula sticking out where he was at. But I feel like there was a walking trail behind the target.
It was, Anyway, it doesn't matter, but it's something I noticed that was funny. Dave's mom decides that they should have a living funeral for Robert so that he can see everyone before he dies. I hadn't heard about that, like, as a tradition, but it actually sounds kind of nice. I kind of like the idea of that.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really cool idea.
Because also, like, it's less depressing than maybe, like, people, all the family gets to come together and say goodbye rather than, like, come together and cry about somebody who died,
Yeah.
I don't know. Wouldn't it be great to hear all that stuff?
I guess they have an actual...
From people, because they're going to say all this stuff after you're gone, but, like, you're not going to hear that. So I think it'd be great to really hear it, while you're still kicking.
Yeah. Although I was thinking about it, like, it's probably less common because it's probably really traumatic for the person who's actually dying. It's just this constant reminder of seeing everybody sad about it before you actually die. So,
I mean, that sounds good to me.
I think it's kind of a cool idea. If you knew your time was coming to an end, it would be a kind of a cool way to end things. I think it would help me actually. If it was me, I think it would help me kind of be okay with it.
Yeah,
in a weird way.
I think I'd rather have that than an actual funeral. I mean, they do both. Spoilers. But I think just having that instead of the other would be a little bit probably, easier on everybody, I would think. But have everybody be there while they're still alive, say goodbye and say some nice things and celebrate.
I guess the one downside is if you throw that living funeral and nobody shows up.
Oh my God.
You're like,
all right. Well, great.
Maybe I'll just end it now.
Another fan approaches Dave on the street while he's carrying a bow and arrow and asks him what the nipper will be this week. To which he says, "What do you want from me? It's February, man. It's cold." And then laughs like a maniac.
Fuck!
The guy says, "Well, fuck you then," and Dave screams, "Fuck you," back at him and tries to explain how hard it is for a guy without a meteorological degree to predict the weather before suddenly getting hit with a McDonald's apple pie. This time, Dave chases after the guys who threw it and wipes it directly on the guy's mouth while ranting about needing to see his family. Dave stands in the middle of the street, literally at a crossroads, when he gets a call informing him that he got the job at Hello America. I thought he was going to get hit by a car. Like, just the way that it was shot, it was a super close-up shot of him, like, in this busy intersection with cars driving around him, and I thought they were going to do that thing where it's super close-up and then just car out of the side, like the Wicker Man, when they keep showing the semi-truck hitting the girl.
But then he'd be fine like 2 scenes later.
The way injuries heal, he'd be good in about 10 minutes.
Dave heads to his dad's living funeral and tells Noreen that he got the job and that it pays $1.2 million a year. So now he should have enough money for her to love him again, in his own words. She tells him that she's marrying Russ.
That dildo?
That damn it. Porker fuck. Dave decides to head outside and practice shooting some trees with his bow while processing the news. Suddenly, he spots Russ having a smoke outside, and he turns, aims the arrow at him and holds it long enough for the whole family to see this psycho getting ready to kill his ex-wife's fiance, which is what I'm guessing they would assume.
Yeah. Yeah, I would.
It's just like casually pointing a gun at somebody.
Okay. We should go inside now.
And I liked Russ's reaction too, because he just sort of like,
Hey,
and then just sort of backs away and goes over and stands behind
just
Noreen.
pats somebody on the shoulder. You see the guy about to kill me?
He's trying to kill me.
He's trying to Robin Hood my ass.
Again, another moment I thought the movie could take a turn, but didn't. Again, I liked Russ. He was like the one good guy in the movie. Which, it's a clever subversion. I liked it. Thankfully, it's time for David's speech, so he puts down the bow and heads inside instead of committing cold-blooded murder. And nobody comments on it or...
No.
He was just
Nobody ever says anything about it.
5 minutes before, he was just aiming at Poe. In front of witnesses. It wasn't just like Russ saw it and then was trying to afford it. Dave's speech goes about as well as you expect. Like anything else he tries in this movie, he starts by saying good afternoon when it's clearly dark outside. Although it's winter in Chicago, so it could have been 4 p.m. Still afternoon.
That's true.
But yeah, it did look like it was nighttime. Then he says when he thinks of his dad, he's reminded of Bob Seger's song "Like a Rock." You know, the song that Chevy used to sell trucks with for years.
Yeah.
Then the power goes out. It's as far as he gets in the speech. And once it comes back on, they skip over his speech entirely. It's been 40 minutes.
Just a little analogy of his whole life right there.
Yeah, so he says that all anyone got to hear him say at his dad's living funeral was, "My dad reminds me of the song Like a Rock."
I thought they were going to build into him actually finishing that thought when he's delivering that monologue in his head, and then it just goes nowhere.
They sort of finish it when he sees him in the car and he's trying to figure out why that song.
Yeah, which I'm glad they paid off, because I was like, oh, okay. Because I mean, like I talked about with you, Patrick, I haven't seen this movie in quite some time, so I totally, I remember the major points, but I don't remember some of the fine details like that, so I was like, fuck, I guess we'll never find out.
Even if they hadn't followed up on it, it kind of would have fit the movie. It's just one more fucking thing that goes wrong.
Well, it's another thing echoing that consumer culture, fast food culture, because that song is now heavily associated with frickin' commercials and stuff. Not so much these days, but in 2005, that commercial with that song was on repeat for 10 years. They used that damn song. It might have been longer than that. It was a long time using that song.
It was a long time. Yeah.
Which completely
that was their
ruined
slogan,
that song.
Their advertising slogan, and I'm sure they paid hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to use that song. So it's like they bought the rights to that song, probably.
It's a great song if you can ignore the Chevy part of it.
Yeah, if you've never seen those commercials, which I don't know how the hell you didn't.
Be born in the early 2000s.
I'd say people who aren't watching Crackle don't watch commercials anymore, so they'll have no idea.
In fact, that scene was interrupted by a Crackle commercial that was for
a Chevy commercial. Right?
We see Dave ignoring calls from Hello America while he's hanging out with his son at his apartment. Dave asks if Mike brought that stuff, which turns out to be the stuff the rapey pedo drug counselors bought him. You mean the shirt, the jacket, or the sweater, or the camera, or what?
The sweater and the camera.
The sweater,
the sweater. Camera. He didn't buy him the camera. He let him borrow his camera.
That was a different camera because he had that Nikon camera. He said he was going to buy him that because it's a different kind of camera.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know cameras. I'm not a pedophile. Dave heads over to Captain Suckoff's house but not before practicing his left and right hooks and contemplating if Thomas Jefferson or Buzz Aldrin ever had hot McDonald's apple pies thrown at them. He then has the realization that only clowns get hit with pies.
It was a good thought process.
I like his stream of consciousness throughout the whole film.
It's so chaotic.
It's pretty realistic.
It follows the logical non-logic of stream of consciousness. He spots the pedo and throws the camera he bought Mike at his face before announcing, "I'm Mike's father, here's your shit," and then beating the fucker on his own doorstep. He then tells him to cut the crap about Mike stealing his wallet and then belts him in the face once more.
This is kind of like the one moment that makes everybody around him universally proud of him. It's like beating the shit out of a pedophile is the only thing that's redeemable about him almost the entire movie.
Yeah. Again, I was like, we'll turn a corner. Like, he's picked up a hobby. He's actually defending his son from this child molester.
Yeah. He's kind of taking an active role in his kids' lives now. So he's getting.
Was this before
camel toe? It doesn't have the camel toe anymore. And
so was this before or after the combo he has with his dad, where his dad tells him that like nothing, the easy thing and the hard thing and the right thing.
That was after the tartar sauce thing. When they decided to split.
Because his dad tells him that
that's right.
the hard thing and the right thing to do are usually the same thing.
That's right.
So it's like he's taking that to heart.
I'm just gonna say, like, thank God this movie for Dave's not purpose, but for Dave, thank God this movie takes place prior to cell phones being prevalent, because his ass would have been canceled. He's fucking chasing down a car, smearing apple pie on some kid, and he's beating the shit out of some dude. People would have
filmed him getting hit with food, and then it would just become even more of a thing to do.
Yeah. He would have been a meme.
Famous on TikTok.
Although nowadays you could probably embrace it and then just build a career off of it. He and Mike head off to a food court, and Dave thinks back on the many times he's been hit by food on the street. He recollects being hit with a chicken breast, a soft taco, a soda from Dairy Queen, falafel, and McNuggets. It's always fast food, shit people would rather throw away than finish. It's easy, it tastes all right, but it doesn't really provide you with any nourishment. Just like him.
That was actually a great line.
When he realizes, I am fast food. That's what he says in the monologue.
Yeah.
Dave explains to Mike that he won't be hearing from the pedo anymore because he fucking wailed on him. Mike is impressed by his dad finally taking charge, and Dave weirdly puts his arm around him and stares off into space as if it's the first time he's ever actually done something affectionate for his son.
I have to ask, why would you choose corn dogs?
Yeah, I like that
too. The shit out of a pedo. His son is now gobbling down corn dogs.
some phallic foods.
Why not a pastrami sandwich?
I mean, corn dogs are delicious, but I thought that was an intentional nod to the pedo wanting him to suck his dick.
Yeah.
I think that's why Dave's even like, what are you eating? How do you have those?
Do you want me to get you one? No.
No, I don't eat penis-shaped food, son. You should know that about me.
Back at Dave's place, he hears someone yell, "Weatherman!" from a passing car, and he ducks. It turns out just to be his dad, who wants to know what Dave meant by the song Like a Rock.
I love that shot so much.
I love that. It was so good. Robert explains that he doesn't get it, and Dave says the line, "I held firm to what I thought was right," was the part he wanted to say in his speech, and that it pertained to Robert. Dave tells his dad that he got the job, and Robert says that's a remarkable accomplishment, and that it's more money than he's ever made, and ends by saying, "That's quite an American accomplishment." Unlike this accent. Yeah, so there's some little not so subtle, heavy-handed symbolism there.
Yeah.
That making more money than he's ever made before is quite an American accomplishment. Mm-hmm. It just kind of feels empty and hollow.
This is kind of the point where I feel like Dave realizes that you will argue. I know that Nigel, you feel this way, but at the end of the movie, we haven't learned anything. He hasn't learned anything. He hasn't grown at all. But this is the moment that I think that he finally realizes, wait a minute, I am successful, and I've been successful this entire time. I just I'm not my dad. My dad's level of success is different from mine, but here I am how much bigger does it get than these type of Good Morning America type things? Like, obviously,
especially for a weatherman, he's got the highest, most prestigious weatherman job in the country.
Yeah, obviously he's amazing at what he does, because he wouldn't have gotten this job if it wasn't for that. So I think this is more him finally realizing, holy shit, I've been successful this entire time, but it's not the type of success I ever expected to get. It's not
Yeah.
what I feel is a success when I look at what my dad did. So I think this is the moment where he finally realizes, like, okay, all right, well, I am this person, and yes, I am successful. So
the issue I take with it is that's not the success that I think he wanted.
Yes.
I think the success he wanted is a loving family and a relationship that he didn't have with his dad.
Yeah. And I think just like archery, he's working at it. And I think that's where we leave him in this film, is he's working towards slowly trying to become the person he wanted to be, but also embracing the person he is.
But see, my thought was he's not working at it. That was my takeaway. So that's, I think, where our differences happen.
That's not the way I saw it, for sure. I saw it as like he's turned a corner, and he's slowly starting to become, you know, more of the person he wants to be, because he realizes what he's lost, and you know, he wasn't able to really get to that point with his dad that he wanted to get to, and then he wasn't able to, you know, solve his marital issues and all that kind of stuff. But he's working on becoming a better person from then on.
Yeah, that's a better takeaway. If that's actually the thing that I like the movie a lot more. That just wasn't how I felt with how it ended. We'll get to it.
I think that's part of the reason why it has a 59%, is because I feel like that's a muddled point that they were trying to make through the whole thing. It was like, at the end, you're just kind of like, wait a minute, he didn't learn a fucking thing.
Basically, from this point on is where I really turned against disliking the movie, like turned to really disliking the movie for it, and because of that interpretation of it. So, anyway,
that's why I wanted to call it out in this moment, is just because I think this is the moment where my line of thought of how this film is, which I've seen this movie a bunch, so maybe that's part of it, is like, you know, you don't really see those little nuances the first time through, but like after seeing it 6-8 times, you start to see those little things. So
yeah,
that's fair.
I think this scene kind of lost some of that magic, because Michael Caine struggled with giving a performance that really kind of made you empathetic to what was going on. Because what I like watching this again now, this time being older and having more life experience and more perspective on things, I thought it was a nice way to wrap up everything. Like, it gives him the closure, especially with his dad, when his dad's talking about, you know, he's talking about the novel. He's like, I read it. He's like, David, this is what I do. This is what I do. And it's kind of like him saying, like, I never expected you to be an author. And I felt like that was a nice little wrap up for his father. And then now he does realize he's successful, and now he's got this job at Hello America, and now he can, like you said, Patrick, he can now start being the person that he is already and start accomplishing the things that he wants to accomplish, because he doesn't have this shadow of his father, of what he thought his father wanted him to be, hanging over him anymore. And that's where I got more appreciation out of the film this time around, having like, oh, okay, it's not just a dramedy about this guy who sucks at everything, who then eventually, you know, because he's the hero, he still wins in the end. There was some pivotal moments there, and I believe there are a lot of people that do experience similar paths in life that he did, where they finally realize, hey, I don't have to. I created these expectations in my head that my parents wanted, and not so much them. Yeah. And then they can finally have some peace.
Yeah. Ditto.
Robert notices Dave's hands and is proud to find out that his son took care of the problem with rapey McDrug counselor, and says he read Dave's book, which makes Dave cringe. Apparently having his Pulitzer Prize winning father read a shitty sci-fi novel while he's knocking on death's door wasn't the last impression he wanted his father to have of him.
Yeah.
Robert then explains that writing is something he does, and he's practiced at it, and he's got good at it, like Dave and doing the weather, which makes Dave break down, since he doesn't really predict anything. Wind goes all over the place, what the fuck? It's like he doesn't work at being a weatherman. He's super successful at it, but it's something he's good at, but he doesn't have to actually work at it.
Yeah, but that's another thing. That's another thing that I feel is a call into this whole thing, is like, neither did Robert. Robert didn't have to work insanely hard to be a great author. It's just something he was naturally good at, just like Dave with the weather. Like,
right. But yeah, like archery he's working at, and he enjoys it, and he's getting better at it. So it's like that's something that he worked at. I felt like he's tried to work at his family and then failed at it. And then, and to me, the message to the movie was basically like, he tries a lot of these things. He tries to get better at a lot of this stuff and it just doesn't work out for him. So to me, it was like, so what's the overall message in life? Like, try at something. And if you fail at it, then find the one thing you are good at it. Just go with that whole hog. That was my takeaway.
Well, it's sort of like Robert says, in life, you have to chuck some things. And I think that's what he was talking about is like, you're good at certain things, you're not good at other things. So chuck out the shit you suck at and stop trying to be good at it.
Which I thought was going to be, okay, I'm going to chuck this job in New York because I want to work at my family. Instead, he chucks his family and goes to the odd job in New York.
Because he's awful at being a dad.
He's terrible at it. So chuck
it's the shitty message from the movie that I got. But it's like, no, you chuck the things that you want to be in, you chuck the things that you don't care about and you focus on the things that are important to you. And instead, he chucks the things that are important to him and focuses on the thing he's good at and gets rewarded for it.
Yeah, but let's be honest. His kids are going to see more of him this way.
Yeah, we see it at the end. They watch him on TV. So, yeah, it's true. I'll get through this part because we kept cutting back. The discussion is just cutting through the breakdown, but it's covering what's in the breakdown. Robert's parting words for Dave are to throw some things away to focus on what's truly important in life and focusing on what makes him happy. Well, he says, in this shit life, you must chuck some things, but you get the gist. Next, we hear Dave say that shortly after the living funeral, they had Robert's real funeral, which takes place during a torrential downpour because it's a movie. So you can't have a funeral scene unless it's in pouring rain. Because slow-mo rain depressing looks cool on film, I guess. Camel Toe tells Dave that she's sorry for his loss, which is weird because it's her grandpa.
Yeah.
It's like and they had a relationship. You see them interacting with the movie. It's not like she didn't know her grandpa, but I thought that was a really weird interaction.
It's really fucking weird.
And then Mike explains that he's going to be a cameraman for Monday Night Football. So they're both finally on the right track. Was there ever any showing of Mike being interested in football in the entire movie? I can't remember.
No, but he likes cameras. So,
Dave reflects on the man he hoped he would have become, imagining qualities his dad had, but as time passed, he slowly realized that he isn't the man he thought he'd be, but is instead the man he has become, which is the weatherman. And they show it visually by all these paths he said he could take, and all these people were walking around him, and he's like, as I was going through life, I saw all these different ways I could go, and then eventually there was less and less of them, and it's just him walking in the street by himself, or along the street as the weatherman.
I think a lot of people can identify with that. Like, when you're young, you're kind of like, well, I could do all these different things, and I here's the things I'm gonna become, and then as you age, you slowly realize, no, not that guy. As much as I want to be that guy, I'm not that dude. I gotta just embrace the guy I am.
We see that Dave has taken the job at Hello America, is still enjoying archery, and has finally embraced the life of a TV weatherman. No one fucks with him in the street or chucks fast food at him anymore because he walks around New York City with bows and arrows. Just walking around. I thought that was kind of weird. I don't know if that's a common occurrence in New York, but it seemed...
odd. I would bet money on it, I bet you see that kind of weird shit all the time.
Yeah, we watched a guy carry around a plank of wood covered in blood.
I guess that's true.
Same guy.
Same guy.
He just grew up to be a weatherman.
He explains that things didn't go as he planned. Another man is with his family, but he's happy with his American accomplishment of being behind heroes like the firemen at the parade, but at least he's slightly in front of SpongeBob. There's a shot of his kids watching him on TV in their happy home with their stepdad and their mom without him there. And everybody just seems cool with it. Like, everybody's just happy. Yeah. And that's, to me, that was the send-off to the movie that really rubbed me the wrong way. It was just like, he's embraced the life of the weatherman and shucked his old life behind because... I don't know, because he's good at it, I guess. He doesn't have to try at it. So chuck your family if you can get a job that makes $1.2 million a year, and everybody's happy.
I mean, to be fair, he was making his ex miserable.
Well,
he still spends weekends with the kids.
Yeah,
he
does
goes
come
back to
see the kids
Chicago
on the weekend.
every
Yeah.
weekend. You know, I think he's realized that like he's not going to repair things over there, so he might as well try and make the best of his life that he has now, while also trying to repair his relationship with his kids at least, but not with his ex-wife. And I think he at one point he mentions that he wants the kids to potentially move out to New York with him. So maybe that's something that happens, but you know, I think this is also like probably shortly after him leaving Chicago. So I don't know, you know, I get it. I get what you're what you're saying, and it totally makes sense. And I'm sure that's a lot of critics took it the same way of like, okay, so what are we supposed to have learned from this?
Be happy for this guy who, like, his kids have fucked up lives because he's not involved in them. Like, you know, I'm sure if he hung out with his son more, his son wouldn't glom onto a child molester who wants to give him some cool compliments. Or if he hung out with his daughter more, she'd have better self-esteem and wouldn't think being called camel toe is a compliment because she can put up with insults.
I would argue that that's the best level of self-esteem one can have. She doesn't even think it's insulting. She's like, I think it's because I'm tough.
Okay, well then she's also still doing bad things like hanging out with people, buying cigarettes and smoking and talking about burning cunt classmates to death and stuff. It's like
that's the thing.
Like he's the cause of his family's dysfunction.
Yeah, so being away should make them healthier.
I guess, but it's just like, hey,
it's the reverse of Mrs. Doubtfire.
Clearly, his kids don't hate him; they want him to be part of their lives. Yeah, and he like takes the opposite approach and decides to pursue this expensive job somewhere and live in a different city and be happy with that. And it just did not sit right with me.
Yeah.
With it, like at least like show that being a negative thing in his life, like, you know, I guess I'm the weatherman, and show his kids missing him or something. But it seemed like they were all happy with him watching him on TV and then going to live their happy lives. Yeah, and he's smiling. He's the weatherman now, so it's just.
I do feel like that
it's a cautionary tale of events, like don't be this kind of a jerk off asshole or idiot, whatever, because you'll end up with a unfulfilling life like this. But I feel like the movie didn't do enough to show that the payoff was bad in the end. You know, it was more like, find what you're good at and that'll make you happy in life, even if it's at the expense of your family or your relationships and things like that. Yeah. And I get the sense that if I'm interpreting that completely wrong, then that's on me, but I also feel it's kind of on the movie because the movie should have not left me with that interpretation if that's what they were not going for. But it just left me really down, and that's after the movie was kind of long, and I don't want to say it was boring because there was a lot going on in it. It had a lot of moments. I enjoyed individual pieces of it. I just thought the overall result at the end was a message I didn't like, and there were a lot of the dialogue and interactions were just kind of off. Like they just didn't feel believable to me. Like you said, when he's having the conversation with his dad in the car, or one of them, I think it was Vince that said it. Like it just didn't feel as cathartic, or like they were trying to make it feel cathartic or a climax, but it's just the performance, whether it's Robert or Michael Caine's accent or the way that they just sort of are weird with each other, it just didn't. It felt kind of flat for me. Yeah. And then again, I felt like, okay, well, we'll redeem it by taking that lesson to heart, and he'll chuck his job and he'll get back on focusing on his kids and stuff. And then they do the other thing. He chucks his kids and family and focuses on his job. So
I feel like they did like a bait and switch on that too, where like he's in his old station and watching TV and like drinking water, and then he chucks it in the garbage, chucks the thing in the garbage, the cup, and then walks out, and then he's doing Hello America. Like, what? Okay. Yeah. I sort of got the same thing, and like I think the point is like this guy isn't a good dude, and you shouldn't live your life this way, and like you shouldn't wait until it's too late. Like I feel like that was what his overall arc was. Like everything he did was too late. Like he just didn't connect with his dad until it was too late. Like his dad was dying before he was finally like, okay, well maybe I should try and actually make this guy not see me as an idiot. And then same thing with his kids. Like it's too late. Like he's trying to repair his marriage, but it's too late.
And that also really bothered me because, again, in the conversation he has with his dad says, you never stop worrying about your kids. Doesn't matter how old they are, how old you are, they're still your kids and you're going to worry about them. And he tells them, chuck things out. You still have time. You never stop worrying about your kids, as in, like, chuck out this stuff. Go be with your kids. Be the father they want you to be. Just be part of their lives, because you don't have to have the same kind of relationship that you and I have. Mm-hmm. And to me, it seemed like he still chucked his kids and went off and did the exact opposite of what his dad said.
Yeah.
So, to the movie's point, that is a good message that I really liked. I just felt like the movie made him not do that and then kind of rewarded him for it.
Yeah.
So,
I also kind of feel like there's this overarching like undertone of this kind of like me first generation of like him at the end, like he looks into the camera and says, "Hello, America." And I think it was the point of it was like, I am you, don't become me. So you need to actually go and try with your family before it's too late. And you need to do, you said, it's on the film to express that, which it didn't, which I get. But yeah, I see where you're coming from, but I feel like that was kind of what they were trying to do with that ending. But yeah, at the same time, it kind of like everything built up to that ending, and then it turned into him just taking off and chucking his kids.
Right.
Kind of funny.